Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name is Parker, and I want to tell you something from the heart. The last thing you ever want in life is to be slapped in front of your own family by another man. That's not just a slap on the face, it's a slap on your dignity, your pride, and everything you stand for as a husband and a father. And if you don't do anything about it, people will look at you like a pushover. I know this because it almost happened to me. When my wife's lover lifted his hand to slap me right there, in front of my wife and our young son, I taught that man a lesson he'll remember every time he tries to raise his hand again. And if you think this story is just about a slap, you're wrong. It's deeper than that. It's about betrayal, pride, survival, and reclaiming your place when life tries to push you aside. Here is how it started. 6 years ago, I married Naomi. I was 28 years old at the time, and she was 25. We were young and madly in love. I remember standing at the altar, thinking there was no way life could get any better than this. Naomi looked like the future I had always dreamed of. Shortly after we got married, Naomi became pregnant. It wasn't something we exactly planned, but we were happy about it. We took it as a sign that our family was starting. Naomi decided to stay at home after our son was born. For the first 2 years, she dedicated herself completely to being a full-time mom. It wasn't easy, but she made it look natural. She put everything into our son, and I made sure to support her the best I could. Back then, I had a solid corporate job. It paid well enough to keep us afloat and even allowed for some comfort. Life felt balanced. When our son turned 2, Naomi decided it was time to get back into the workforce. She had a degree in education, so it wasn't difficult for her to land a teaching job. I supported her decision completely. I knew she needed more than just the house and the baby. Having a purpose outside the home gave her a new sense of energy. With both of us earning now, things felt even better financially. We weren't rich, but we were finally in that zone where we could breathe easily. Looking back now, those early years of our marriage were the good years. We dreamed together about buying a bigger house someday, maybe even having a second child. But I guess that's the thing about life. Just when you think things are stable, something comes along and shakes everything apart. The company I'd worked for over the years was acquired by new owners. At first, we all thought it would mean better systems, more growth, maybe even promotions. Instead, they came in with their corporate buzzwords, only to start restructuring everything. And when they were done cutting what they called excess, I found myself without a job. For years, I'd been the dependable provider. Every morning, I'd wake up hoping for an email or a call back, but all I got was silence. I didn't have time to sit and feel sorry for myself, though. So I registered my car with one of those ride-hailing platforms and started driving. Going from business meetings to driving strangers around town just to scrape together gas money. At the same time, I'd always wanted to run my own online store, so I thought, why not now? I spent hours studying dropshipping, buying courses, trying to build a clean website, and stocking products I thought would sell. But no matter what I did, nothing worked. The courses I paid for gave generic advice I could have gotten for free on YouTube. Every time I thought I had figured something out, it flopped. I was draining money we didn't even have, and all I got in return was more frustration. After a while, it started to feel like I was cursed, like nothing I touched could work out. I wasn't just broke financially. I was emotionally worn out. And that's when the tension at home started to grow. Naomi had been patient for a while, but patience has a limit. She started making these side comments whenever bills were due. She never said it directly, but her tone made it clear. I was becoming a burden. I understood why she was upset, and I didn't blame her. She was doing more than her fair share, and it was wearing her down. But I was doing my best too. I wasn't sitting around waiting for a miracle. The problem was that my best wasn't bringing results. And after a while, that wears you down. You lose confidence. You stop talking. Conversations between us became short, dry, and about nothing more than bills or our son's school. Even intimacy felt like a distant memory. The only thing that brought me real happiness during that time was my son. He was the one thing that still made me feel like I had a purpose. Every time he called me Dad with a smile, it reminded me why I was fighting so hard not to collapse under all the pressure. But even as I clung to my role as a father, Naomi began changing in ways I couldn't explain. She started staying out late more often, without giving explanations altogether. She'd leave without telling me where she was going, and when I asked, she'd respond with things like, "Why do you care?" or "That's none of your business." I didn't want to think the worst. Even when the signs were right in front of me, I convinced myself she was just tired, frustrated, needing space. I assumed she was just blowing off steam, and things would settle once my business picked up or I got a job. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. I was so busy trying to fix everything else that I didn't notice the foundation of my marriage had already started to rot. One frustrating day, my car, which has been giving me issues for weeks, finally gave out completely. I had no choice but to take it to the mechanic. After dropping it off, I headed home. Our son was still at school, so the silence in the house was almost a relief. I sat down for a bit to figure out how to stretch the little cash we had left when I heard the sound of a car pulling into our driveway. Then I looked out the window, and my heart froze. Naomi, my wife, was sitting in the passenger seat of a silver sedan with some man I had never seen before behind the wheel. She got out first and walked to the door. Then she turned around and tried to get him to come inside. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I could read her body language. He shook his head like he was in a rush. That's when he came over, grabbed her by the waist, and kissed her right on the lips. Then he smirked and told her to be a good girl. And she giggled. I stood there, watching through the window, like I was trapped in some slow, terrible dream. I didn't want to believe what I saw, but it was right there in front of me. When she finally opened the door and walked in, she saw me, standing there with my arms crossed and my face blank. Her entire expression changed. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to say something. Then she paused. She knew I saw everything. I looked her in the eyes and asked one question, calmly but firmly. "How long has this been going on?" She blinked and tried to act like she didn't know what I was talking about. But I wasn't backing down. Not after what I just witnessed. So I said it clearly. "How long have you been cheating on me, Naomi?" That's when the switch flipped. She stopped pretending, then got loud and defensive. Accused me of trying to control her. Said I had no right to police her life. She tried to flip the script on me, like I was the one in the wrong. The pain I felt at that moment was too much. I didn't know what to say anymore. So I said nothing. I went to the bedroom and closed the door behind me. In the days that followed, Naomi didn't try to hide anything anymore. It was like she had taken off a mask and decided she was done pretending. She came and went whenever she pleased, with no explanations and no apologies. Sometimes she wouldn't even answer at all. I could tell she believed she had the upper hand, that I was stuck, that I wouldn't dare make any big moves because she was the one earning most of the money now. She had the stable income, and she knew that gave her power, especially when it came to the one thing I cared most about, our son. I started to suspect that she was using the threat of divorce as a weapon. Like if I made too much noise or stood up for myself, she'd take our son and bleed me dry with child support. She never said it out loud, but the message was there like she was daring me to react, knowing I didn't have the resources to fight her. And it worked for a while. I kept quiet and kept the peace. But every day, I could feel the pressure building inside me. Watching her act like I didn't matter while still sleeping under the same roof as me and our child. It was like death by 1,000 cuts. Something inside me knew I couldn't let this continue forever. It was time to take control of the situation, not just emotionally but legally. I called the divorce attorney. That conversation changed everything. I laid everything out for the attorney, from the affair to the disrespect, the threats of divorce, and the way Naomi had started acting like I was some burden to her. The lawyer listened carefully, asked a lot of questions, and then gave me some advice that made everything click into place. He told me, "Don't wait for her to file first. File now and do it in Tennessee." See, Tennessee is a fault-based divorce state. That means if someone cheats, that infidelity can be legally considered as the cause of the marriage breaking down. That might not seem like a big deal to some people, but when you're fighting for custody of your child or trying to avoid being punished by a system that sometimes favors the wrong person, it makes all the difference. Since Naomi was trying to intimidate me into keeping quiet, I had to take that threat seriously. The attorney said if I filed first and could prove she was cheating and emotionally neglecting the family, the court would consider that during the custody hearing. I agreed immediately. There was no reason to wait anymore. My lawyer got started on the paperwork right away. Within a few weeks, everything was ready to go. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was making the first move. The next step was preparing for the custody fight. I wasn't trying to win just to hurt Naomi. I just knew deep down that our son didn't need to be raised in a home where his mom brought strange men around like it was normal. I needed to give my son something stable, something Naomi clearly couldn't offer anymore. So, with my lawyer's help, I got everything in motion. The divorce was officially filed in Tennessee, but I kept quiet about it. One afternoon, I was at home with my son when I heard the familiar sound of tires crunching on the driveway. I walked over to the window, pulled the curtain slightly, and there she was again, Naomi, stepping out of that man's car. She leaned in and said something to him with a smile on her face. I stepped out of the house, straight to the porch, and waited for her to reach the steps. The man stayed near the car, like he was waiting to see how far he could push his luck. I looked at Naomi and said, "What you're doing is wrong. Bringing another man to this house is disrespectful. You're setting a terrible example." She didn't even pretend to care. Instead, she rolled her eyes like I was just some annoying background noise. Before I could even say another word, the guy who'd been dropping her off stepped forward. I turned to him and said, "Mind your business and get off my property." That's when he laughed and said something I'll never forget. "It's your wife's property when she divorces you." That moment lit a fire in me. I looked him dead in the eye and called him exactly what he was, a homewrecker. I told him he was pathetic for interfering in another man's marriage, for sneaking around like a snake and thinking it made him some kind of hero. That must have gotten to him, because the next thing I knew, he lifted his hand to slap me. But I was ready. The second he moved, I caught his wrist midair, yanked it forward, and twisted his arm back with enough force to send a clear message. "Don't ever put your hands on me." He cried out instantly, screaming in pain, begging me to stop. Naomi was yelling and screaming at me like I was the villain. "Let him go. You're hurting him," she shouted, panicking like she actually cared about him more than her own husband. But I didn't let go until he was pleading. I released his arm and stepped back. He dropped to the ground, holding his arm, groaning, and Naomi ran to his side. She pulled out her phone and called the paramedics while glaring at me like I was a monster. I looked at both of them and said loud and clear, "This marriage is over." The paramedics arrived not long after. They helped him into the ambulance, and Naomi went with him. She left that night and didn't come home. The morning after, I sat in the living room alone, staring at the divorce papers. I had nothing left to wait for. The marriage was over, and dragging it out would only make things worse for my son and me. So I packed a few essentials, woke up my boy, and we left. We drove toward Tennessee, back to the place I grew up, back to family, stability, and people who still respected me. My parents welcomed us with open arms. That first night, I actually slept. Not tossed and turned like I used to, but real, peaceful sleep. When I finally charged my phone the next day, I was met with 89 missed calls, all from Naomi. I didn't need to guess what triggered the panic. She must have come home and found the house empty, the car gone, and those divorce papers sitting plain as day on the table. With the divorce officially in motion, I did what I had to do next. I sued the man she cheated with. In Tennessee, we have a law called alienation of affection. It means you can take legal action against someone who intentionally interferes with your marriage. I had evidence. He will think it was a joke until the court summons hit him. At the same time, the custody battle began. Naomi fought hard to twist the narrative. She told the court I was emotionally unavailable, said I had been absent during our struggles, and tried to label me as a deadbeat. But she didn't know I came prepared. In the end, the court granted me temporary custody, while the divorce and custody hearings continued. Naomi was furious. I cared about my son. I was finally doing what a real father is supposed to do, protecting his child and standing up for himself. Moving back to Tennessee was the kind of decision you don't realize you needed until after you've done it. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. There was no tension in the air, no silent treatments, no disrespectful remarks waiting to greet me the moment I stepped through the door. My mom and dad were more than happy to help with their grandson. He had cousins to play with, uncles who gave him advice, and grandparents who spoiled him with love. It was like he had a full village around him, and that alone brought me a level of relief I hadn't felt in years. Without Naomi's constant nagging or passive-aggressive attitude draining me daily, I could finally think clearly. I started sleeping better, eating better. I was becoming someone my son could look up to again, not just someone he saw worn out and beaten down. To anyone out there going through something similar, whether it's betrayal, a broken marriage, or a tough custody fight, I want to tell you this. Stand your ground. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're weak for caring or a failure for struggling. Especially not someone who was supposed to have your back but chose to break you instead. If you've been through betrayal or you're currently fighting for your kids, I'd like to hear your story. Drop a comment, share your experience, give some advice to others who might be feeling lost or hopeless. You never know who your words might help. Thank you for listening to mine. I hope my story gave someone out there the clarity or courage they needed. Until next time, stay strong and protect your peace.